In a single quarter of 2023, an all-you-can-eat shrimp promotion at Red Lobster lost the company over $11 million. $11 million in 3 months from one menu item. The internet had a field day. Memes about freeloaders eating Red Lobster into bankruptcy. Photos of guys with 6 plates of shrimp piled in front of them. Headlines blamed the cheap customer, the greedy customer, the selfish customer. Here's the thing nobody was telling you. The customers didn't kill Red Lobster. The customers were eating exactly what Red Lobster told them they could eat. Red Lobster was killed by a decade of financial engineering, by private equity ownership, by a real estate strip job that left the company paying rent on land it used to own, and by a supplier that was also the owner pushing through a permanent shrimp promotion designed to sell more of their shrimp, even though it was bleeding the restaurant dry. The story they're telling you is that gluttonous Americans ate Red Lobster into oblivion. The actual story is one of the most brazen examples of corporate extraction in modern American business. And almost nobody is telling it correctly. If you're new here, this channel is about the financial stories behind the brands that built the America you grew up in. The ones that defined holidays and family dinners and Friday nights, and then quietly fell apart. Today's story is different from the retail collapses we've covered before, because Red Lobster wasn't killed by Amazon or e-commerce or shifting consumer tastes. It wasn't killed by streaming or a changing economy. The math on Red Lobster's death is simpler and uglier than that. It was killed on purpose, slowly, by people who got rich doing it. Stick around. There's a villain. There's a permanent shrimp promotion that should have ended after 90 days. And there's one of the cleanest examples I've ever seen of what happens when the supplier is also the owner. January 18, 1968, Lakeland, Florida. A restaurant operator named Bill Darden and his partner Charlie Woodsby open a place they call the Red Lobster Inn. Now here's what made this radical at the time. Lakeland is in the middle of Florida. It is not a coastal town. The nearest beach is about an hour's drive. The conventional wisdom in the restaurant industry was that you didn't open a full-service seafood restaurant inland. Seafood was for coastal cities, for tourist towns, for fancy white tablecloth places near the water. Bill Darden looked at that and said, "Why? Why can't a family in suburban Florida have shrimp and lobster on a Tuesday night? Why is fresh seafood a luxury restricted to people who live near the coast?" The bet was, if you can pull off affordable, accessible, family-friendly seafood inland, you can pull it off anywhere in America. And it worked. Within 2 years, Red Lobster had 5 locations and was outperforming projections. In 1970, the food conglomerate General Mills, the cereal company, acquires Red Lobster. At the time, it was a 5-restaurant chain. General Mills had cash, distribution infrastructure, and a long-term view. What happened next was textbook. Under General Mills, Red Lobster scaled aggressively. By 1978, they had 236 restaurants doing about $291 million in annual sales. By 1985, nearly 400 restaurants. By the late 1990s, the chain peaked at over 670 locations in the United States. Along the way, they invented popcorn shrimp in 1974. They introduced Cheddar Bay biscuits in 1992. A free pre-meal item that became one of the most beloved bread products in American restaurant history. They built the Lobster Fest and endless shrimp events, which started as limited-time promotional traffic builders. They became, for 2 generations of Americans, the place you went for a special seafood dinner that you couldn't cook at home. In 1995, General Mills decided it wanted to focus on consumer packaged goods, cereal, baking, packaged food, and spin off its restaurant division. Red Lobster, along with Olive Garden and a handful of smaller chains, became part of a new publicly traded company called Darden Restaurants, named after Bill Darden himself. Under Darden, Red Lobster continued to perform reasonably well for almost 2 decades. It had its ups and downs. The brand needed refreshes, the menu got tired in places, but it was a profitable, durable, casual dining business that consistently generated cash. And then around 2010 to 2013, 2 things happened that changed everything. The first was the rise of fast casual chains like Chipotle and quick service chains like Chick-fil-A. They squeezed casual dining brands like Red Lobster from below. Customers who used to spend $40 on a sit-down meal started spending $12 at a faster, simpler place. The second was activist investors. They looked at Darden restaurants and saw a thing they wanted to break up. In 2013, activist investors started pressuring Darden restaurants to split up. The thesis was simple. Red Lobster was the slowest growing brand in the Darden portfolio. Separating it from Olive Garden and the higher growth concepts would, in theory, unlock shareholder value. Translation: it would let Darden's stock price go up. Darden management initially resisted. They said selling Red Lobster would destroy long-term value. They said the chain still had upside. The activists kept pushing. By the spring of 2014, the board folded. On May 16, 2014, Darden announced it was selling Red Lobster to a private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital for $2.1 billion. To finance the deal, Golden Gate did something that should be illegal, but unfortunately isn't. They executed what's called a sale-leaseback. They took the real estate, the actual land and buildings under approximately 500 Red Lobster locations, and sold it to a different company called American Realty Capital Properties for $1.5 billion. Let me say that number again. Golden Gate bought Red Lobster for $2.1 billion. They immediately sold off the real estate for $1.5 billion. The net cost of Red Lobster to Golden Gate after the real estate sale was $600 million. They essentially financed 71% of the purchase price by selling the company's own land out from under it. But here's what Red Lobster got in exchange. Instead of owning the buildings it operated in, instead of having that real estate as a long-term asset on its balance sheet, Red Lobster was now a tenant, a renter, paying lease payments to a landlord on hundreds of properties, with multi-decade lease terms locked in at market rates with built-in annual escalators. The Red Lobster bankruptcy filing later revealed that those leases were costing the company about $200 million a year in rent. $200 million a year. In money that, before 2014, was building the company's equity. Think of it like this. Imagine you owned your house outright. Then someone bought your house from you for cash, but as part of the deal, you had to sign a 30-year lease to keep living there at full market rent with annual increases. You got the cash from the sale, but you now have a mortgage-sized rent payment for the rest of your life. You have no equity, and the asset is gone. That's what happened to Red Lobster, and it's the financial event that killed the company. Everything that happens after this in the story is just symptoms of this one decision. Now we need to introduce the second villain in this story. Thai Union Group is a multinational seafood conglomerate based in Bangkok, Thailand. It is one of the largest seafood producers in the world. It owns brands like Chicken of the Sea Tuna, and for over 20 years, it had been one of Red Lobster's primary shrimp suppliers. In 2016, 2 years after Golden Gate bought Red Lobster, Thai Union came in and bought a minority stake, about 25% of the company, for $575 million. Over the next several years, Thai Union increased its ownership to 49%, eventually becoming the largest single shareholder. Now stop and think about this structure for a second. Thai Union was Red Lobster's biggest shrimp supplier and its biggest shareholder at the same time. This is what's called a related party conflict of interest, and it should be unsettling to anybody who understands how corporate governance is supposed to work. Because here's the question. If you're the supplier, you want Red Lobster to buy more of your product at higher prices. If you're the shareholder, you want Red Lobster to be profitable so the company's value goes up. Those two interests aren't the same thing. They are, in fact, often directly opposed. And when the same company is on both sides of the table, somebody has to lose. Here's what the bankruptcy filing alleges happened next. Under the leadership of an interim CEO named Paul Kenny, a Red Lobster executive who, according to court documents, had close ties to Thai Union, Red Lobster eliminated 2 of its existing shrimp suppliers. The competitive bidding process for shrimp procurement was effectively dismantled. Thai Union became the sole shrimp supplier to Red Lobster. Predictably, with no competition, Red Lobster's shrimp costs went up. According to the bankruptcy filing, this created burdensome supply obligations. meaning Red Lobster was now locked into buying a certain volume of shrimp from Thai Union at Thai Union's prices with no alternative. And then came the masterstroke. Endless Shrimp had been a Red Lobster promotion since 2003. Every year for about 3 months, Red Lobster would offer it as a limited-time deal designed to drive traffic during slower seasons. The price was deliberately set just above their cost, so it generated a small loss per customer. But the increased traffic, the drink sales, the appetizer sales, the bigger checks made up for it. It was a classic loss leader. In June of 2023, Red Lobster's management, reportedly under pressure from Thai Union, made Endless Shrimp a permanent menu item. Not a 3-month promotion. Permanent. $20, all the shrimp you can eat, every day, all year. The result was a disaster. Customers showed up in droves. The promotion was wildly popular, and every single one of those customers represented a loss to Red Lobster because the company was paying Thai Union's monopoly prices for shrimp, then selling it at a flat all-you-can-eat rate. In a single quarter, the promotion alone generated over $11 million in losses. By the end of fiscal year 2023, the company posted a $76 million net loss. Here's the part that should make you angry. Thai Union, as the supplier, was still making money on every plate of shrimp Red Lobster sold. The volume increase from the permanent promotion was good for Thai Union's shrimp business. The loss was concentrated entirely on Red Lobster's P&L. So a company that simultaneously owned 49% of Red Lobster and supplied all of its shrimp pushed Red Lobster into a promotional structure that bled the restaurant's bottom line while feeding the supplier's top line. The bankruptcy filing was direct about this. It accused Thai Union of exerting, quote, undue influence over operational decisions that benefited Thai Union at Red Lobster's expense. In January 2024, Thai Union saw the writing on the wall and decided to exit. The company announced it was divesting its entire Red Lobster stake and would take a $530 million non-cash impairment, essentially writing off almost the entire $575 million investment it had made in 2016. Here's what that means in plain English. Thai Union spent $575 million to buy Red Lobster equity. They spent the next several years using their position to drive Red Lobster's purchases of Thai Union shrimp. When Red Lobster ran out of cash, Thai Union wrote down the equity investment to nearly zero and walked away. The shrimp revenue they captured during their ownership period? They kept that. Red Lobster's cash position collapsed from about $100 million to under $30 million in just 6 months. Without Thai Union providing capital support, the company had no financial runway left. In early May of 2024, Red Lobster abruptly shut down about 50 locations across the country without warning. Employees reported showing up to work and finding signs on the doors announcing immediate closures. Some staff were laid off, some were transferred to remaining stores, sometimes hours away. There were reports of potential federal labor law violations because Red Lobster failed to provide the legally required 60-day advance notice. On May 19, 2024, Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11, bankruptcy. The court filing was unusually candid. CEO Jonathan Tibus, a restructuring expert who'd been brought in specifically for the bankruptcy process, named Thai Union directly in the filing. He accused them of exerting undue influence over operational decisions. The elimination of competitive shrimp suppliers, the permanent Endless Shrimp deal that prioritized Thai Union's interests over Red Lobster's survival. Red Lobster emerged from bankruptcy in late 2024 under new ownership. But the structural damage from the 2014 sale-leaseback was permanent. The leases are still there. The $200 million a year in rent is still flowing out. Same-store sales were down another 6.2% in 2025. The post-bankruptcy entity is still bleeding. Analysts increasingly question whether profitability is achievable without major lease renegotiations that the landlords have no incentive to grant. Here's the lesson, and I think it's bigger than just one chain. The story you're going to hear about Red Lobster on cable news is that all-you-can-eat shrimp killed a beloved American restaurant. That story is wrong, and it's wrong on purpose. The framing of greedy customers ate the company into bankruptcy protects the people who actually did the damage. It turns a story about corporate extraction into a story about individual gluttony. And it lets the people who walked away with billions of dollars off the hook. The actual story is this. A private equity firm bought a healthy, 50-year-old American restaurant chain. They immediately stripped out the real estate, the company's most valuable long-term asset, and pocketed the proceeds. They handed off the gutted, leveraged company to a foreign seafood supplier who had a direct conflict of interest as both owner and vendor. That supplier proceeded to dismantle competitive procurement, lock the company into expensive supply contracts, and push a promotional structure that fed the supplier's top line while bleeding the restaurant's bottom line. When the math finally caught up, the supplier walked away with the cash they'd already extracted. The private equity firm had already exited years earlier. The bankruptcy left the employees, the landlords, the lenders, and ultimately the American customers holding the bag. This is the same playbook you saw at Sears, the same playbook at Toys R Us, the same playbook at Kmart, the same playbook at Bed Bath & Beyond. Different industry, same villain, same extraction model, same ending. An American institution gets bought by financial engineers. The real estate gets stripped. The supply chain gets compromised. The brand gets squeezed. The customer relationship gets ruined. And then, just before the wheels come off, the people who did it cash out, blame the customers, and move on to the next target. Red Lobster didn't die because Americans ate too much shrimp. Red Lobster died because the people who were supposed to protect it sold it for parts. Lobster bibs. Slow fade to a current shot of an empty parking lot. End on channel logo. If you remember a birthday at Red Lobster, a first date, a graduation dinner, the smell of those biscuits hitting the table before you'd even ordered, the sound of your kid trying to pronounce surf and turf, that was a real thing. It was a real American institution. For 2 generations, Red Lobster was the place where families who couldn't afford white tablecloth seafood could still have a special night out. That was Bill Darden's entire vision back in 1968, making seafood accessible. And for over 50 years, it worked. And then it didn't. Not because the food got bad, not because Americans stopped loving shrimp and lobster, but because financial people who never set foot in one of those restaurants decided the brand was worth more dead than alive. What we lost when Red Lobster died wasn't just a restaurant chain. It was the idea that a quiet, profitable 50-year-old American business could be safe from the kind of financial cannibalism that's eating its way through every legacy brand in this country. And it's still happening. Right now. To brands you love, to restaurants you grew up in, to stores you still shop at. The Red Lobster playbook isn't over. It's just looking for the next target. If this story landed for you, if it made you think about Red Lobster differently, or about how a lot of these collapses keep following the same pattern, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. This channel does this every week. We dig into the financial stories behind the brands that built American life, and we tell them with real numbers, not talking points. Sears, Toys R Us, Kmart, Blockbuster, Bed Bath & Beyond, the death of the American mall. All here, all free, no hype, no doom, just the honest math. There's a video on screen right now about insert next video title. Go watch it next. I'll see you in the next one.